I don't want women to start using motherhood as an excuse to bring a stop to their career. When I speak to a lot of teenagers and a lot of teen moms, girls as young as 13, 14 are speaking of PCOS, PCOD, thyroid, high insulin, high blood sugar levels. So you're already dealing with those lifestyle diseases at the age of 14 and 15 when you are at your absolute peak of being fertile. The Indian and Asian way of parenting is so unique. Our cultural, social, physical landscape is so different from the West. How do we raise parents along with the children? Everybody tells you how to raise the child, but nobody teaches you how to raise the parent. Motherhood is troubleshooting all the time, and we forget to troubleshoot for ourselves. We're generally a very social community, so for us to raise children in India is definitely not much easier. Imagine going through teenage years and perimenopause and menopause together. It can be traumatic. They are coming 15 days after delivery and saying, I'm ready to work. Choose your battles with yourself, with your spouse, with your children, at work. I don't want to blame my child 20 years later saying, तुम्हारे वजह से मैंने नौकरी छोड़ दी. You don't realize what happiness can mean when you're in that moment. If you are leaving the CCTV and still checking while you're leaving it with under trusted supervision like grandparents or aunts or whatever, because that means it also is lack of trust in human relationships, right? Today when you're trusting your child with the dadi or the nan or the aunt or whatever, trust karo na, because your child is going to be, and I see so many people saying, oh, but what if she drops? Haven't you dropped? Haven't you made a mistake as a mom? I think parenting and having a child is the purest and the most selfless form of love that I have ever experienced and maybe will ever experience. I think it changes your complete DNA as a human being. Every child is very different. So you've got to accept the as business of the child that has been given to you.
Founder and CEO of Kidsstoppress.com, author, entrepreneur, and a parenting coach. Mansi Zaveri is with us. Very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to see you, Mansi. Let's begin with your, pet project or your passion project, if I may call it. So, parenting, right? But within parenting, I want to look at specifically on motherhood today, because as we discussed before the interview, there's so many things that need a conversation. So shall we start with when, how did you start? Because I know that you, as somebody from the corporate world, was doing well, and then you made this shift to starting something of your own. Why did that shift happen? Was it a motherhood compulsion?
I love the word, by the way, motherhood compulsion. Unfortunately it wasn't, and I'm very, very grateful that it wasn't a motherhood compulsion. I think for me, it was a time where I had a thriving corporate career, and I realized I saw a huge gap in the parenting space where, parents could be empowered to make informed choices, and I said, this is what I want to do. So I found that gap. I decided to dive in almost 10 years ago, and there hasn't been any looking back, because I feel the Indian and Asian way of parenting is so unique. Our cultural, social, physical landscape is so different from the West that we could not, at least I could not back in the day, follow what the others were doing, or the global parenting platforms. They really did not resonate with having a grandmother at home, and also having a help at home, and also having your in India, a lot of the men don't contribute as much to parenting as globally it is done.
So this is like a support group that you build in this platform.
Absolutely.
What else does it offer?
So it offers discovery across products, services, policies for parents. Just this earlier before our session started, we were talking about, global education and how global education is changing so dynamically. Today, what does that mean for Indian students? If a parent actually wants to look that up, where does the parent go? And that was the whole theme. How do we raise parents along with the children? Everybody tells you how to raise the child, but nobody teaches you how to raise the parent.
Like they say, kids don't come with a manual, and oftentimes we don't know. When there is troubleshooting, what do we check? There's no manual.
And I feel like motherhood is troubleshooting all the time,
Yeah,
and we forget to troubleshoot for ourselves. So I would love to actually talk. I think there's just so much of information out there that I feel like I want to talk about how can mothers troubleshoot for themselves, because I think that's the game changer.
That we are going to talk about that. In fact, since your story, and the answer probably is no. What I asked you about whether it's a motherhood compulsion that made that, it's a career choice you made. You saw the gap and you went there. But let's be frank. I mean, that's not always the case with most women who decide to move to something, doing something on their own from, say, a thriving career. Oftentimes, it's a motherhood compulsion.
Yes.
Oftentimes, it's because you want more time with your children and a flexi schedule and things like that. And so many women fall off the career radar.
Right.
And I would take the liberty to say that most fertile years to be a mother coincides with those crucial years for career.
Yeah.
Which is why women lose out. They are forced to choose career or kids.
One, I feel that a place where you can have the maximum number of kids should actually be India, and where it's the easiest to have kids is India, because we stay with family, or we have friends around, or generally as a community we are very social, right? We will ring our neighbor's bell, and we will go and ask for dahi and shakkar and this and that. So we are generally a very social community. So for us to raise children in India is definitely much easier. We have all the help that we need in the world. Like, I recently read a quote by Naval Ravikant, and he said, if you have a driver, a cleaner and a cook, you're already rich, right? And if you're thinking about that, then in India, at least a cook or
Most
a cleaner
do,
is something definitely a lot of people have, if not at least a cleaner. So I would say that we are really privileged to have that support system. What we don't have is organized childcare, which I think is a struggle for a lot of women. I have a lot of women working in my team as well. But I don't want women to start using motherhood as an excuse to bring a stop to their career. I do believe that you may not be able to chase that 9 to 9. You will definitely be able to chase a 9 to 2. Right? I have so many women who are working in my team who've delivered their second child, who've looked at looking at flexi hours, and COVID has only made it easier because work from home has become a breeze. We didn't even have that back in the day, right? So I feel if we could do it back in the day, like 16 years ago, if I could do it, I'm sure women can do it today. It requires a certain number of sacrifices. Are you ready to make that sacrifice? Is the question you should ask. Because you're not going to be able to get everything that you want. You can't have a thriving social life and a thriving career and be the coolest parent and have your house perfectly in place and have a fit body and have all everything intact for you. You're not going to be able to do that, right? So what are you going to drop off the wagon and what are the sacrifices that you're going to make to have that
you
career?
make that choice.
Absolutely.
Don't have those choices thrust
Absolutely.
on you.
But
you choose and make peace with it.
Yes, absolutely. And don't use motherhood as an excuse. I also love the part that you mentioned about how our most fertile period and also the period where we are raring to go from a career standpoint, unfortunately coincides. But to all those people, and I had my kids when I was really young. I had my kids at 27, and I would recommend it to everybody. And the only reason is because today we're dealing with so many lifestyle choices that are making it only harder. When I speak to a lot of teenagers and a lot of teen mums, girls as young as 13, 14 are speaking of PCOS, PCOD, thyroid, high insulin, high blood sugar levels. So you're already dealing with those lifestyle diseases at the age of 14 and 15 when you are at your absolute peak of being fertile, right? And then at 27, when you are raring to go, it's going to be very difficult if you don't make that choice to have the child then, because one, you're much younger, you have those energy levels intact, so it makes it much easier for you. Second is you're not dealing with that part of infertility, which can be very, very straining emotionally, financially, physically on a man and a woman, but more so the woman. I'm sure your man must be extremely supportive, but the injections are going into your uterus lining, and you are going to take medication, and you're going to do the insertions, everything medically is happening to you.
I'm taking a big point out of what you're saying, Mansi, and I'm glad you brought this up. You are saying that the motherhood choice, you've got to make it early in life.
Absolutely.
And make it consciously.
Absolutely.
If you think that I will take the motherhood choice later, you are going to be in for a lot of challenges.
Yeah, if you don't want children, that's completely okay. If you've decided as partners that okay, we're not going to go down the parenting route,
That's again,
that's
your
absolutely
choice,
your choice, and that's okay. I'm not even judging that. That's great because you have that clarity. But if you want to have your children, I always tell people, have them early. Because today women are also dealing with early menopause and perimenopause. Imagine going through teenage years and perimenopause and menopause together. It can be traumatic, right? It can really be traumatic.
You mean to say your kids in their teenage and you
Absolutely.
in your menopausal years? Okay.
It'll be a hard one. And it's just harder. Like I can tell you, between my two girls, I have a almost 4-year gap, and I could see the energy levels shift between what I could do with child 1 with versus what I could do with child 2.
4 years later.
4 years later, and trust me, you don't know how those bones are going to break, and you don't know how achy wakey you're going to get. But I would totally recommend having them early.
Yeah. So what I did, again, I'm taking the liberty to share this. I mean, precisely what you said, that I was very career minded, and imagine in a career like mine as a journalist, where you have erratic hours, where you can't possibly maintain a schedule, news doesn't happen with a warning ki kal 10 baje blast hoga or something. And I was also reporting from the Northeast. So, but then like you said, I had the support system, so I took a conscious decision to be in my hometown where I would have the support of my parents. So I guess one should not be ashamed, embarrassed, shy, seeking out to your family. That I did, very consciously. And then of course, again, like you said, be very aware that there will be sacrifices along the way. I have chosen motherhood. My next 2 years, career will be dull, will take a back seat, but I'll come back to it.
Right.
It's on hold. It's not entirely given up. And when you operate with that optimism, and of course you have to have confidence in your skills, that I'm good with it, I'll get back to it.
Upgrading yourself while you're even taking that break. I think a lot of people forget that. If you're taking that break, please do take it if you don't have an ecosystem to support. But keep up with your industry. Keep pace. Keep upgrading, upskilling yourself. Don't expect that, okay, I'm not going to upskill, I'm not going to upgrade and expect the same pay package, because every single year you're only going obsolete from a workforce perspective.
So those 2 years, like, you're willing to give that compromise. And while, again, very nicely said, being in touch with your trade, doing the things that you anyway did, but not going to a workplace, that helps. But I want to come to another point now about say, the choices that we are pushed to. It's not just children, then comes your spouse, then comes his career choices, and then there are those compulsions as well sometimes. So primarily what we are looking at is a woman is pushed a number of times in her life in various junctures to choose between career and family. Have you ever been approached with these sort of questions, and how do you make people decide?
It's very easy to keep pushing yourself down. And I often see that most women are the ones who will say, no, I'm not the primary earner. I'm not doing it for the money. I feel as women, our whole conversation with money is so scarred and so stretched that we are unable to assume that we can be primary caretakers of the family, right? Not primary nurturers or providers. We want to be providers. And I mean provide financially. So we never assume that what we are making is of any significance. इसलिए हम पहले ही sacrifice करने को तैयार हैं. We are ready to go through that slaughter because we assume what we are earning is insignificant, right? And therefore the sacrifice. I truly believe that if you have that conversation with your partner, that this is also important to me, and if you plan and match, right, it is possible. It is absolutely doable. It is absolutely possible. So don't try and jump in to make that sacrifice. Yes, is it difficult? It is very, very difficult. I mean, there are times when we're both unable to match or sync our calendars, but that has only helped us raise very able children who have learned to be independent and fend for themselves.
Yeah, and there will be times probably when you're
Absolutely.
single parenting maybe for a year or something, and then the
Absolutely.
two partners are apart, because
Yeah.
those sort of sacrifices,
Yeah.
I actually picked up from the word sacrifice that you said, or say for the sake of your career, you've had to move outstation
Yeah.
somewhere for a brief period of time.
Yes.
As long as you make it limited, it
Yeah.
can't be
And
a prolonged process.
I feel a lot of people assume that it is okay that he's going to do this and I'm going to do this, or why is it so gender stereotypical? I would say don't make it gender stereotypical. Pick on your strengths as individuals. Like example, I could be very good with technology and apps and just time management of the children. So I will take care of that. Or like subjects, I'm very good with math, science, English, history and bio, and I will take care of that. He may be very good with physics and chemistry, so he may take that. So I'm saying divide according to your strengths.
Absolutely.
Don't divide according to gender, and it's okay if by default it happens to be gender,
Yeah.
right? And because he has a job where he's required to travel a lot, I've decided that I will travel on the days that he's not traveling.
Yeah. So
And
that
I have that
understanding.
flexibility. Unfortunately, he does not have that flexibility. But I'm saying pick and play to your strengths. And I feel ये हम जो बात कर रहे हैं, it's so esoteric because both of us have those choices. There are women out there who are going and working every single day, not taking a single break. They're taking a 5 o'clock train, coming to work, in that fast local, because they're not even, or look at the house help that we have. They're not thinking that what am I doing? Like, do I have a choice of not going back to work? They are coming 15 days after delivery and saying, I'm ready to work because you need the money.
Yeah.
Right?
In Bombay, we see a lot of those women, a lot
Yeah.
of them. But then as you move beyond the
Yes.
metros, you see a lot of women, again, because of social conditioning,
Yeah.
also that decision forced
Yeah.
on them.
Yes.
That abhi
Yes.
to bachche ho gaye, abhi to
Yes.
bahar jaake kaam karna is not something we
Yeah.
do with women. So those cultural things are also
Yeah.
there, let's face it.
Absolutely.
But as far as possible, like you said, if we are clear with our choices,
Yeah.
in fact, even the choice of a partner, Mansi,
Yeah.
it starts from there.
No, absolutely. But I'll tell you, we have a property called Kidsstoppress Awards, right?
Okay.
Where we have brands who work in the parenting and childcare space. We award them for the excellent work that they're doing, and I'm so proud to say that we had close to about 2,800 plus applications from different brands. They're largely women-run businesses,
Nice.
and they're not like maybe 40% will be metros, but the other 60% is non-metros. You have women who are entrepreneurs in the parenting and childcare space from Kochi, Coimbatore, Thrissur, Indore, Jaipur, Kanpur, Lucknow, Calcutta, pockets around of West Bengal. You have just so many incredible women contributing from every single aspect of life.
And they become inspirational for so many others.
Absolutely.
That's what's needed.
Absolutely. We had a mom who was running a fitness community, and she's based out of Coimbatore, and she has millions of followers. And today this device has given social access and a passport that you can really start your business from anywhere in the world. From the smallest town in India, you have this passport to reach the world. And I feel women, especially moms, should just make full use of it, and they are, I feel, in many ways making use of it. आप घर पे बैठ के, look at the lady who went viral, right? This is looking just like a wow. It was some boutique somewhere, and what does she do? She puts on the garment and say, ये ऐसा है, इसकी ये embroidery है, इसका ये है, and she has made that a global playground for her.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's all right for you to say, Mansi, that you can do this and you can do that. And then what happens is we have opened out so many fronts, ab sambhalo, So
I'm taking a deep breath. It's already causing overwhelm.
Yeah. So again there, and I read this somewhere, it was so funny, I may not get the exact words, but I think it went something like, either you expect my house to be perfectly in order or me to be perfectly in order.
Yes.
Don't expect both,
Yes.
Right from your appearance, the number of things, and as you grow older, the challenges there, to maintaining your house, to the children. Now, you wanted it all.
Yeah.
And then to be productive in your profession. God help us, right?
Yeah. I really think there is motherhood overwhelm, and it is causing fatigue, which we never talk about. And I really want to share this on a platform like this, that as mums, we are constantly going through this decision-making fatigue, and we feel like, I want to do this, but I want to do this, but. So every time it goes to, I want to do this, but I'm being pulled back. And I want to do this list is increasing so much because today you see somebody else do something and you feel like you can do it. Somebody else has a dress and you want that. Somebody else is going for Zumba class and you want that. Somebody else has a cooler Mac and you want that. Somebody else is contouring their face and then they're using those magic wands and they're doing some Korean mask and then they're putting these little eye patches and you want to do all of it. But you've got to realize, honey, there are only 24 hours in a day. And I keep saying this to all the women that I meet. What are you ready to give up for the price of that overwhelm, right? Like Randy Zuckerberg said this very interestingly. She said, out of these 5 things, you can have only 3. She's Mark Zuckerberg's sister. And she said that family, friends, sleep, and I'll combine sleep and health as one for now. And then there's work. And then there is... we combine this social life, right? Or I would say, actually, I would call the 5th one as entertainment, right? Because all of us are like social media, OTT, movies, and we want to do 100 other things. So out of these 5, you can only have 3. You will have to drop 2. So which ones are you going to drop?
Choose your battles.
Choose your battles every single day. Choose your battles with yourself, with your spouse, with your children, at work. In the kitchen.
And then make peace with it. And then don't keep comparing that, oh, I dropped that or I dropped that.
Absolutely.
You know, that, streamline it for yourself and as per your priority, which is why I love the word prioritize. That's my like buzzword for every day. I got to prioritize. I have 20 things to do, but I got to prioritize and I'm not out to please anybody.
Absolutely.
So, that whole game is an everyday thing, Mansi. You've got to do it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm saying, like today, at this stage in my life where I also want to build a business, I don't know if those eye masks are doing too much to my life. They may work for somebody who has a 24-hour job to look good, but I also have 100 other roles to play and I'm happy playing that. And recently I posted on my Instagram this really amazing thing, which was about, Mom, stop feeling horrible about your, about your stomach at the gym or your inability to do something or packing every meal with body weight amount of protein and this and that and ordering something on Instagram and if it's a crop top and feeling crappy about it because you're not 20. And I think as women it's so hard for us to accept it, but we've got to accept it. We've got to accept to love ourselves in the current avatar and the stage of life we are in.
And not resent it.
Not resent it and not try to compare our lives with a 20-year-old who has 16 hours a day to work, because if I start doing that, something is going to fall off the radar. What that is and when that comes back to me, am I ready to pay that price? If I'm ready, I can do that same 16, 18, 20. You can have seasons of work where you can have 16-hour days. I'm sure as a journalist, it must be crazy for you. When there is crisis, you're working even 20 hours a day. But 365 days of the year, it cannot be that. It
cannot happen,
right?
Like I said, again, you prioritize. And then, of course, after a point, let's face it, it comes naturally. When you've done it over the years, then it falls. So to all those women, I think we should also reassure them that initial years when you are grappling with multiple things, it's difficult, but you do learn to, streamline and process and things fall into place. But there is always a mother's guilt, if I may. I wanted to ask you this. Those of us who are working, we would think, oh, we're not getting enough time with our children. That guilt does creep in, let's face it. And maybe those, the stay-at-home moms may always have this guilt about, okay, we're not doing enough for ourselves or we're not out there. So, there's a mother's guilt, then there's a guilt for not doing enough for yourself, putting the self behind. So, is there a midway? Is there a, golden mean?
I wish there was. I mean, I let go of the guilt years ago. When my kids actually told me once at bedtime that they want to be the future CEOs of Kidsstoppress, and I was like, "Arey wah, I didn't even know I built a legacy business." But I let that go off for the simple reason I thought it was an energy drainer. I'm somebody who believes in energy enhancers and drainers. It was draining me. It was not letting me focus on how can I enhance their experience of being with me in that moment. It's taking me to a moment which is out of my control, which I cannot do anything because I want to work. I don't want to blame my child 20 years later saying, तुम्हारे वजह से मैंने नौकरी छोड़ दी थी, तुम्हारे वजह से I didn't take Kidsstoppress to the scale that I wanted to. No, she is not responsible for my career choices. So I don't feel guilty. I don't let my let guilt define me on any of the days. I choose what is today, right? If I am here, I will plan my day and ways and work around their schedules, but at all points in time I'm not going to be there. And I also want to raise children who are independent, because that's my job as a parent. My job is to raise independent humans.
And I think children see it all, don't they?
Absolutely.
And they learn to respect you. They see the work that you're doing.
Absolutely.
And they feel, oh, my mom does this. And somewhere they carry a sense of pride as well.
Absolutely.
But then we mothers, maybe we don't see that. We think that they, you know, we have not done I mean, of course, the comparisons do come in, at least in terms of, okay, I was not there on this particular day when everybody else's moms were there. So that little bit. I mean, I'm just saying you can't completely free yourself from it.
But I'll tell you what they notice, and which I made a very, very conscious choice. When I'm there, I'm fully present. I'm not doing anything else. So much so that, you know, when they were little, I would leave my phone at the park if I'm in the building compound. Or, you know, I don't need, I mean, back in the day, there were no Ubers or whatever. So we just had to hop in a taxi and come back, and it was much easier. But I am fully there. At dinner time, I'm fully there. Because that's a choice I make. Those are values that are important to my family. At bedtime, I'm there. Of course, there might be 5 out of 10 times that I may not be able to make it for bedtime, but I am there. So when I am there, I am there. Otherwise, there are interactions with other people, whether it's grandmother, whether it's aunt, whether it's father, whether it's a house help. It is connected in a more way of being more present with whoever they are. You know, I have to say this, you know, like I've written this again on my Instagram, which is about elevator etiquette, right?
Okay.
And I'll tell you why it's very important to our conversation, because you know, every time my daughter and I would, and she's 16, and we used to go up and down the elevator, she used to be on the phone, and I used to get very upset. And there were other people who were in there, and I think it's very disrespectful, because you can at best express pleasantries like, hi, how are you, or whatever, or press the elevator button for them. And then slowly she started watching me, like if there's a little baby, I'll smile at her or I'll chat with her. And just recently when we were coming back up, I said, you know, she started talking to this little baby, and I was like, like 16-year-olds usually cannot even look beyond that screen, and she was actually doing that, and she almost had like a 5-minute conversation with that child. And I was like, how did that make you feel? And she said, good. Because sometimes you don't realize what happiness can mean when you're in that moment. And that to me is far more important than being a fly on the wall on most occasions. Yeah, kuch contribute nahi kar rahe ho, but you still want to. You know, you call that being present, but you're not actually present. So वो तो खाली मतलब आपको अपने आप को shame करना है. That's why you're calling yourself guilty. But you have nothing to do with that moment. That moment is theirs to live.
But you know, now what I see, and this was not there when my kids were small, but now I see, you know, the new mothers, they have a lot of gadgets. They have CCTVs in their homes, and you know, I'm talking about more, of course, like city moms, where they monitor their children. Is it helping or hurting, this entire thing of holding a phone and you looking at the baby all the time?
You know, I recently read this piece which was very interesting about the whole CCTV anxiety that a parent actually goes through, and why generalize between only the mother. I think mother and father both, like the amount of times that they actually look into the camera. I think it's great if you are, you know, alone and you don't have family support. But yes, I do feel like it does cause a lot of anxiety, because you're trying to micromanage every single move. If you are leaving the CCTV and still checking while you're leaving it with, you know, under trusted supervision like grandparents or aunts or whatever, because that means
paranoia as well.
Paranoia, but it also is lack of trust in human relationships, right? Which I think is crazy, because today when you're trusting your child with the dadi or the nani or the aunt or whatever, trust karo na, because your child is going to be, and I see so many people saying, oh, but what if she drops? Haven't you dropped? Haven't you made a mistake as a mom? Then why the double standards of others can't make a mistake with your child versus you? So I just feel like, yes, it's causing a lot of paranoia. It is a necessity, but it cannot it can literally not give you sleepless nights when it's actually supposed to give you nights full of good sleep.
So I would say we were better off without it. I mean, that little bit of anxiety without it was probably better than the anxiety with it, because now you are compelled to not be present wherever you are going. You know, the decision to have children, Mansi, itself is very overwhelming to the young couples out there who are undecided. On what basis you think a couple should decide whether to go for having a kid or not?
I think one, it is extremely personal, definitely each to their own. But if I could say about my experience about having a child and what it has brought to me, I think parenting and having a child is the purest and the most selfless form of love that I have ever experienced and maybe will ever experience. I think it changes your complete DNA as a human being. It is that and most definitely have children if you believe that you have the time to raise them. Please don't have them because society is telling you and family is telling you, and you feel like if I don't do this, I will be like, you know, an anomaly. Don't do it because of that. Do it because you genuinely believe that you want to do it. And this is, I think it's nothing short of a miracle in my opinion. It's the highest form of meditation that I think the parents go through in that labor room, and that teaches you to love someone before you, and it changes you as a human being completely. The minute you start loving somebody more than you, I
feel this parent-child relationship, Mansi, is something that you should not miss out on. Like, just if you look back at your own parent and you think that whole equation where parents are always taken for granted, they are always, you know, you do feel that umbrella over you. So similarly, you know, you want to do that for the next, you know, for your offspring. So that that instinct is always there, which is why I find that many couples who decide not to have children will end up adopting a pet or somewhere giving vent to that maternal paternal instinct, right?
And it kicks in any time. So if you're thinking in your 20s, okay, I'm never going to have kids, and then in your 40s it's at its peak, you're going to find it very, very difficult. But you know, I find parents who have one child struggling to make the decision to have the second one, because you feel like it's taken you 2 years to just reclaim your life and sanity and sleepless nights from that child, and now how do you make the decision for the second one, right? And I just find that I don't know, do you get that question a lot?
Yeah, I do. I mean, because I chose to have 2 kids, so for me the question would be, how did you decide to have your second child, or at what point? So people would ask, how far apart are they? You know, so again, that is a very important decision on when, on first whether you want to, and then when, because I feel I personally took a very conscious decision that since the child in their initial years require a lot of parental care and attention and supervision, right from taking them to the loo and all of that. So I wanted my first kid to be out of that phase before I have a second. And I didn't think I was capable of handling 2 toddlers. So I knew my own. So that's why I often say that you know your own capabilities and limitations. You feel, I want to get it over with and done with in one go. That's fine. But I knew my capabilities, and I knew that, you know, I need that gap. And then, so that's about one last question about, you know, raising children then. Hands-off parent versus hands-on parent. Some parents are like so child oriented, you know who I'm talking about, like, you know, they're always, every decision, everything bache, like bachcho ke upar hai sab kuch, how they design their life. And then there are parents who feel they're fine and I can lead my own life, and they have a bit of a hands-off approach. Which is better, and how did you navigate your parenting journey?
You know, I don't know if any of them are good or bad or better or worse, but I think the approach that I have been always teaching and practicing, and which is what I specialize in, is the conscious parenting way, which says that your job as a parent is to be that springboard, is to be the one to accept the as-isness of the child. So every child is very different. So you've got to accept the as-isness of the child that has been given to you, right? Some children need more attention. Some children need more giving. Some children need you to be hands off. But to be conscious about what are their needs and how much can I provide without forgetting me. Because the minute I forget me, I am unhappy and therefore I will not be able to. And I am not looking at me just being a provider, like you said. I'm looking at me being a nurturer, right? A nurturer who is there. Sometimes I want to be that fly on the wall. Sometimes I need to be in the playground. I need to keep deciding basis the situation and basis the child. So I'm not going to say hands off or hands on, because like I said, our job is to empower them to springboard, to go and live their most authentic self. That's my job as a parent, and I'm only going to do that. To make every decision to micromanage them is not my choice, and it's not something I take great pride in doing. But of course, like I said, each to their own, whatever works for you and whatever works for your village, right? Whatever works for your ecosystem. Maybe you don't have that ecosystem. Maybe you are not that person. Maybe you are dealing with your past where you were never taken or nurtured for. So you are coming like, I'm going to overcompensate. So I'm not judging
So
you.
be wary of that.
Be
Maybe probably
very,
what you're
very
saying,
of that.
self-aware is also,
Absolutely.
as a parent, sometimes we
Absolutely.
forget. I think beautifully said, Mansi, because there are two things which I'm going to conclude with. Conscious parenting, you know, I think that's the word, you know, as long as you know the child that you're dealing with, and again, even among siblings, one needs a hands-on, one needs a hands-off approach. And I think what you said, and you meant that, you know, you have to fill your own pitcher first, right? Like if you have nothing to offer if you are empty, or so, you know, what I feel is do not keep your own vessel empty. You know, you cannot pour from an empty vessel. So if you're looking after yourself, like this is what I often tell myself, if I'm giving myself time, if I am filling my own vessel, that I'm doing that because I can offer better.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can be a better mother, keeping yourself happy first.
Yes.
So there should be no guilt about that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that, because that's something I have been following, and great pleasure talking to you,
Absolutely.
Mansi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.